Alpha Maker. We're going to welcome everybody here that's on our social channels as well as internal. This is a bi-weekly event that essentially Sean has chosen to broadcast today. So we're very excited. We'll be going through a whole bunch of different topics. Anybody internally here can ask questions in the chat. And we'll get going here in a second. I will also be posting some additional links for those that want to join Alpha Maker, and especially for our public servants, we have a special promotion called Alpha Maker Patriot. So without any further ado, Sean, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Alvaro. Hey, good to see all you guys here in Alpha Maker. For those of you that are joining us live on YouTube, X, and Instagram, particularly happy to have you here. I wanted to give an opportunity to see, have you see for free what we do in Alpha Maker. Okay, I'm super proud of my community, what we're doing here. We share interesting, important science that you're not going to get elsewhere, and an opportunity for Q&A so you can ask me any questions. So the first half of this, I'm going to be getting into some science, interesting science, and I'm going to be particularly looking at alcohol use disorder. That's the technical term for alcoholism, people that drink too much, and innovative treatments that you need to know about. So hopefully if you saw this on social media and you're here for the first time, you'll enjoy this content. All right, so a few things right up front is I'd like you to think about at the end of this, maybe join us here in the Alpha Maker community. We want this to grow. We want to get out this content to help end chronic disease. And we're doing what nobody else is doing in the social media space. So Alvaro is going to be posting this link, but I know it's hard to see, but that's just to show you we're not some glitzy, high professional operation. We are raw, we are real, we are authentic. And that link says growingbetternotolder.com/alpha maker. So that's a different subscription for those of, for most people, you're going to be an Alpha Maker. But if you are currently military, you are formerly military, you are formerly government, you are a first responder, all of that, that was me, okay, in my lifetime. I want to give, it's crazy, 90% off, because I know what it's like to be in government service, working hard, and you don't do it for money. So that's a different link, and you'll get 90% off if you're that. So you just go to growingbetternotolder.com, Alpha Maker Patriot, all one word. So with that, we'll repeat this, put it in the chat so you can join us. If you like this program and you want to participate and have more of this, those are the links to do that. All right, let me get started with this. Okay, hey, check out this guy. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm an emergency medicine physician, and about 15 years ago, I was working in at the time doing my shift, and I was working with an ER nurse, and she told me this story, this haunting story about her uncle and her dad. Okay, so her uncle and her dad were identical twin brothers. That means they were identical. Fertilized egg, split. They're as close as can be. I know a lot about identical twins because we study them in science, and I am an identical twin. I have a monozygotic identical. I am a monozygotic identical twin. And so this story hit home for me. And what is the story? One twin was a profound alcoholic, could not stop drinking. His whole adult life was just tragedy, numerous attempts at trying to stop alcohol. It never worked. And the one twin didn't drink at all. So here is this kind of a picture. She showed me this photograph on her phone. Okay, she held it up. She showed me this picture of her uncle with a razor, one of them, you know, portable electric razors, only he had end-stage alcoholic use disorder, and his liver, he had cirrhotic liver, and he was basically had ultrametastatic. He's walking around talking into his razor. He was so confused at the end of his life. But before he got there, He needed a liver transplant because his liver was dying. And they knew he could get a portion of his identical twin brother's liver. So the ask was, will you give me a little bit of your liver? Not the whole thing. You just need a little bit because it will grow. And then I can live. And his identical twin brother loved him and turned him down because he knew, at least he thought, it's not going to matter. You're just still going to keep drinking and you're going to destroy that liver. You and I both will have surgeries and it will be for nothing. The end result is you're still going to die. So he said no to his twin. It was a haunting thing. I remember the look on this guy's face as close as I could get. I went to AI, described it. And that nurse, when she was telling me that story, what a freaky story, especially for me as an identical twin brother. All right. Well, let's get into tonight's program because it's going to be about alcohol use. It's alcohol use disorder. And I want to talk about a randomized control trial using fecal microbiota transplant, an FMT. We talk a lot about FMTs in the Alpha Maker program. It is where you take a little bit of feces from a really healthy person and put them into a diseased person for the purposes of correcting and curing disease. It's super exciting. If you're never heard about anything like that, keep in mind, this is new science coming out. It's not all that new. It's actually got started about 2009. When 150,000 Americans were dying a year from C. difficile, this is the best treatment for it. So a fecal microbiota transplant. And keep in mind, we're going to see a lot more of this happening in the future. So FMTs are very interesting. So in this particular this study, I'll be reviewing several studies: reduced craving, reduced inflammation, reduced relapse in alcohol use disorder, proving that microbes influence willpower, okay? The microbes in your gastrointestinal microbiome really do influence your willpower, your ability to say yes and no and compulsions. Explain the mechanism between the gut, liver, brain communication system. And I will be getting into that. I'm going to show you this intricate relationship between the gut, the liver, the brain, communication, and your immune system. Specifically looking at endotoxemia, which are basically toxins that get produced within the gut and travel throughout the bloodstream and go throughout the body, and how they can be replaced by neurochemical stability. Okay, so we'll see this connection and how important it is. And then I'm going to highlight the transformation. This isn't treating disease. It's really amounts to reprogramming the biology for freedom from compulsion. So what I'm positing you is I'm going to show you these mechanisms that we are really going to give in the future the ability of people to have freedom from compulsion they have right now. So it's not just going to be alcohol. It's going to be drugs. It's going to be pornography. It's going to be gambling. And it's even going to be sexual offenses. So stay tuned. We're going to see a lot more interesting studies happening. We're going to get into the existing studies, but I want you to be ready for what I'm positing to you because it's super, super important and super, super interesting. The next thing I'll be talking about is the connection between fecal microbiota transplants and the Alpha Maker protocols, okay? Discussing what do we do here that are helpful towards optimizing your microbiome, and how we use our particular strategies to create the best ecosystem within the gut to help us right now to be as healthy as we can possibly be, because you may have to serve as a donor for somebody in the future in need. You may be a donor for other people. In fact, I'm looking at a resource where my medical practice is going to be taking a look at a living biologic product called an LBP, where we'll be utilizing, hopefully through arrangement license, this particular product is mount to an FMT similar to it, and we'll be able to do that for people. And donors, right now, you can be paid pretty well. One of the donors in this particular program has made $250,000 $1,000 for a part-time job given his stool. Okay. And so do these strategies. You may be a compensated and potentially well-compensated donor in the future. So let's get into this program. All right. So we're going to look at this study. I'm going to step away so you can take a screenshot. I'm going to be looking at these studies, but I want you to be able to read them yourself because you should have access to this information. I interpret it and explain things to you, but it would be helpful if you also understand it. All right. So let's get into it. In this particular study, there's a randomized clinical trial, fecal microbiota transplant for alcohol use disorder. It's in the Journal of Hepatology 2021. That is citation, so you can take a look at it. And we will be discussing, we will be discussing this fecal microbiota transplant, again, taking stool from a donor human being and place it in somebody else. And it is effective and has been shown to be effective in alcohol use disorder. Again, somebody has a compulsion to drink it and they lack freedom. I cannot tell you the tragedies I've seen in law enforcement as a former cop, as a detective, as an undercover narcotics agent, as a criminal prosecutor, and then as a physician, particularly emergency medicine, ER, how many tragedies have unfolded in this guy's life before my eyes. And alcohol, if you have any kind of gray hair, you've been around a long enough time, you know that alcoholism is a huge problem for humanity. So it's time that we take a look at this and really resolve this and figure this out and try to see what we can do to help people out. All right, so FMTs demonstrate this extraordinary behavioral influence of the human microbiome, okay, the collection of microbes inside our gut, and how it has this extraordinary influence showing that changing microbes just by doing an FMT, getting some new ones in there, can change desire, change discipline, and decision-making, literally influencing how you desire things, how you have discipline or a lack of discipline, and how you go about making decisions. Okay, so we'll be exploring this in a few studies and try to give you as much insight into as possible. So in this study, they looked at participants with alcohol use disorder and cirrhosis. Okay, that means liver disease. They were formally diagnosed with active alcohol use disorder. They were real deal, legitimate scientific alcoholics, not just, college students, drinking too much. In the intervention, they took a single donor optimized fecal microbiota enema. So they took feces, introduced it through the rectum through an enema application. And they had the donor previously enriched with two particular species of gastrointestinal microbiome. There were results. So Lactobacillus and Ruminococcus. These are, the particular species aren't particularly important, but you can pull them if you want them to take a look at the particular study. You can pull that study. It decreased in that study alcohol cravings 90%. 90% in the FMT versus the placebo, which was only 30%. So 3 times more efficacy in reducing those cravings. And alcohol also resulted in decreased alcohol consumption. Now, a lot of people say, I'm not drinking. How do you know they're not drinking? Okay. There's a particular metabolite that you can find. It's abbreviated ETG, ethyl glucocaronide. It's hard to say. That's why it's abbreviated ETG. And you can test for it and see whether somebody has been drinking alcohol because it binds to a certain enzyme, and you can say for sure they've been drinking alcohol or they have not. So we use this in medicine for people who are transplant patients and to get them to make sure that they're not drinking. We can test and we tell them. And I had a terrible tragedy. I remember walking out as a med student, a young man out of a hospitalized patient's room, is 25 years old, diagnosed with myocarditis, advanced alcoholism, 25. He's married, had kids, but could not stop drinking. we were laughing and joking around when we rounded them, a bunch of team of doctors. And I was a med student, part of that team. And we walked out, and the senior resident said he's a dead man because he's still drinking. And we just walked out, wrote him off, died. Because he wouldn't get a liver transplant because he still kept drinking. We're not going, it was actually a heart transplant. So we don't give hearts and livers to people that are drinking transplants. So we can test and know for that. But the tragedy is they can't stop. No, when you can't stop and you're going to die, that's a real compulsion. But we're going to get into how this can be improved. So increased cognitive performance in this particular study, the performance of people and the quality of their life improved also when they had this FMT. So another study we'll be taking a look at is this one right here. Reduced alcohol preference and intake with alcohol use disorder is transmissible to germ-free mice. Okay, so in this particular study, it wasn't a human study, it was mice. But they did something for it to take a little bit better. And something to keep in mind, if you ever get an FMT, you should be considering whether you should kind of attenuate your microbiome. If you are diseased and you got a problem and you need to have that problem fixed, it might be beneficial for you to take a round of antibiotics or a few antibiotics to kind of, stun your microbiome, basically wipe it out so that you can get a better microbiome from a donor. So that's what they did in these mice. They gave antibiotics. They also gave a diuretic to clear out the microbiome. And it's essentially kind of what happens if you get a colonoscopy. You get everything gets wiped out. You have a massive defecation enema. It is a clearing out because they need all that stool out to take a look at your colon. So this is in the journal Nature Communications 2022. That is the link right there. You can take a screenshot of it and pull it and see that interesting study. And then another study to take a look at is with regard, well, in that study, some other aspects I just want to cover before I hit this one is FMTs really are starting to emerge as probably the most powerful biological intervention for alcohol use available today. They are that powerful. So really, FMTs should not be thought of as this experimental thing. They are really have broached the subject of just being kind of a pilot beta kind of thing. They are really legitimately curing people because it directly restores this connection between the gut, liver, brain axis. I'm going to cover in a little bit, and some slides just coming up, that get disrupted by chronic alcohol use. So this important nexus really is undermined by ethanol. Too much alcohol, people just destroy it. And in multiple human and translational studies, FMT fecal microbiota transplants rapidly reduced alcohol craving and intake and improved cognition, improved mood, improved restored microbial metabolites such as short chain fatty acids. One of the most important ones, one of my favorites is butyrate. And FMT helped to restore butyrate, short chain fatty acids that regulate inflammation in your gut, inflammation in your brain. So you're going to be thinking better, inflammation in your immune system, and we'll be getting into it. And it just improved neural signaling. All right, so let's take a look at this connection, how it actually works. So there's an axis between that affords this mechanism between the gut, liver, brain, and immune system. And so as the gut epithelial cells that line your gut, epithelial cells are the same cells on your skin line the inside of your gut. That's why melanoma sometimes, a lot of times, appears on your skin, also appears in your epithelial cells inside your gut, and no one ever sees it and can kill you. So it's just one continuous sheet of tissue on your skin, in your mouth, in your esophagus, going down to your gut. It's continuous, okay? Same outside, same on the inside. And that epithelial integrity, the junction of those cells, how healthy they are together, when they're separated and they're inflamed, leaky gut. You probably heard about leaky gut. Things get in and out that shouldn't be doing that. But you want to restore that integrity, and the FMT allows that from happening, decreasing endotoxins from within the gut from leaking in. Powerful mechanism. That's how it's working. Helps to restore the integrity of those cells. And the liver, when is impacted through endotoxemia. So what does that mean? That the toxins aren't transmitted through the portal vein to the liver, causing liver toxicity. Otherwise, you get this bathing of toxins in the liver, cirrhosis, liver hepatitis, inflammatory changes, and hepatic cirrhosis, end-stage liver disease from alcohol abuse. And this is mediated through interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor, other inflammatory molecules that we hear all the time about in alpha maker, from what we talk about a lot, which is visceral fat, this dumpster fire inside of you that a lot of you who joined tonight have no idea about visceral fat and how much you probably have inside of you, but it's ongoing storm of inflammation. So very impactful on the liver. And then the brain is the next connection that gets affected through this nexus from short chain fatty acids having an effect on vagal signaling, hitting the brain, modulating GABA receptors and glutamate and reward centers in the brain. So we can literally map out this influence with these FMTs, how it's affecting our brain and in a very beneficial way. And the last is the immune system. Normalizes biomarkers and receptors in the immune system via butyrate, the short chain fatty acid that's involved in this signaling and helping to optimize and regulate an immune system. Alcoholics, abusive alcoholics have terrible immune system, pneumonias, infections, they're falling apart. Their immune system is very compromised as a consequence of all that alcohol. So, all right, so let's take a look at some more science. The microbiome really is your master regulator for craving, cognition, and control. That's how you should think about your microbiome. So you really want to be investing in your microbiome. We get into the microbiome a lot in Alpha Maker. We get into it even more when you come and do an ultimate start, which is kind of our system working with our medical practice to get one MRI to take a look at that fat around your heart, fat in your immune system, fat in your abdominal system, give you the strategies for optimizing your microbiome. Here, stay with me in this whole program. At the end, I'll give you the 6 big strategies I'm always talking about here in Alpha Maker, and you'll benefit from, considerably optimizing your microbiome. But we actually give another 44 more when you come do the ultimate start, or when you come work with me one-on-one or one of my doctors for 5 or 6 hours straight. We're really get into all that stuff, and it's a really a 1-year long program, and you come work one-on-one. So we'll give you these at the end of this program. You'll have these big things. All right. So why this matters to Alpha Maker? Because we are really trying to get into an awareness of those who participate regularly in Alpha Maker, what they need to do to optimize their health. And it really starts with optimizing your microbiome. It's not a really sexy topic. I've noticed when I talk about it on social media, not many likes, not many people follow. They're just not really interested in that particular topic. But I can tell you, it is so unbelievably important. If you really want to get healthy, you cannot do that without optimizing your microbiome. All right, so we're going to get into a few more other probiotic studies. This one particular interesting study that I told you I'd get into looked at this particular probiotic supplement. It was really important to grasp in this particular study because they used this particular species uh, uh, called Probiotic LGG, and it prevents, in this particular study here, liver fibrosis from through inhibiting hepatic bile acid synthesis, enhancing bile acid excretion in mice. So it's in that particular study, but it was also studied in another interesting study where they looked at the LGG right here on therapy of liver and drinking assessment in patients with moderate alcohol-associated hepatitis. In the American Journal of Gastroenterology recent study, 2023, and in this double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled study, they again found reduction in cravings and also in liver disease. The markers of hepatic inflammation were markedly decreased in the patients that received Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG. So this particular probiotic, available on Instagram, or sorry, Amazon, is a fantastic supplement that's been noted in now more than one study. So I'm throwing it out there. If you have a problem with alcohol, for God's sakes, try this supplement and use it. If you know somebody who's struggling with alcohol, and you probably do, I think we all have had exposure to him, get them to try this particular supplement and see how it goes. So this is I'll step aside so you can capture in a screenshot this particular citation so you can read it. You can jump in Amazon and get Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG. I'm taking it because at least it's been studied for compulsions with alcohol. I don't have any other compulsions, but it is a pretty beneficial microbe, and I've been studying it in research, and it has other beneficial effects. But I at least want to support its use here for alcohol use disorder and bring it to people's attention. All right, let's see if I can do this last study here. Is studies on the microbiome and alcohol use disorder, where probiotics restored bowel flora. That means the species of microbes that can be detected within feces post-defecation, and improved liver enzymes and alcohol-induced liver injury. So another demonstration of the beneficial impact on liver injury, cirrhotic liver. So that's several times we've seen this come up, and then finally, I want to we'll be closing out. I want to return back to this story. Okay. The tragedy here is the doctors were horrified that this one identical twin gave up on his twin and wouldn't give him a little piece of his liver. But the reality is it probably would not. And I think that twin knew his twin more than anybody else, better than you or I or those doctors. And I can push back on it. And I could say, you know what? Maybe the twin did the right thing, because his twin likely would have died even sooner with the liver transplant. Surgeries are invasive. There'd been even more immune compromised, probably immunosuppressive medications, and it could have hastened the twin's death even faster, and he still would have drank through it, and likely it would not have ended up with a good result. And also there's the potential impact to the twin donating his liver from complications from surgery. So I'm not going to judge the twin for that, and probably he knew his identical twin brother more than anybody else. But here's what I will say. The real need here wasn't a liver transplant. It was a fecal microbiota transplant. He didn't need his twin brother's liver. He needed his twin brother's stool that could have been easily transplanted into him. And it's now being done excitingly, an increasing number of individuals with alcohol use disorder. And so I want to bring this to your attention because I want you to be thinking about this particular application for all the people that you may know that are alcoholics. Think about the probiotic, think about an FMT. If the probiotic does not work, but I really want to challenge this notion that alcoholics and alcoholism is a moral failing. It's nothing more than somebody who just has the wrong attitude about alcohol. The reality is they're infected. They're infected with microbes inside of their microbiome that drive them to consume alcohol and have a lot of craving. Species of microbes that are dependent upon alcohol. These species of microbes that are inside your gut amount to 70 trillion of them. And we're just now starting to learn about them. But I want to push the narrative and try to expedite the need for science to get this treatment and these insights as quickly as possible into these diseased people. Because, you know, I've kind of grown up hearing that alcoholics are diseased. A lot of people think of it, but a lot of people push back and say it's just a moral failing. It's a lack of it's poor judgment. They just have, they're just thinking incorrectly about alcohol. They are really infected. This is a biological condition, and FMTs can deliver them from that. And we need to be pushing that. Physicians can't do this alone. It's really going to take a grassroots efforts where patients are demanding this and politicians are demanding this. And you're not going to find support for this in big pharma, because here's what we're going to find out. It's going to cure many other conditions. We're finding that out all the time. Lots of medical conditions are completely being reversed through these FMTs. So it's not just alcoholism, and it's not just substance abuse and gambling, pornography, but many diseases like Crohn's, inflammatory bowel disease, depression, anxiety, and even cancer is being treated now with fecal microbiota transplants. So lots of exciting studies and insights being gleaned all the time in this particular area. And I'm super happy and very excited about taking on a role, looking at this more seriously with this upcoming company. All right. If any of you out there are listening and have a loved one that's struggling with alcohol use disorder, you can message Alvaro, and I'll be glad to give you my opinion about that particular situation and see if I can assist with connections that I have. All right, with that, I will turn it back to my colleague Alvaro to take us and help host the second part of our program, which is the Ask Me Anything. It's where you get to ask me any questions you have, and I will do the best I can to try to help you out. Alvaro?
All right. And for those listening live on all our various social platforms, just know that just put your question in the comments. We'll go ahead and start off with some of the ones that have already kicked in here, but we'll take them here one at a time, and that's where we find that a lot of the real answers to your questions are really important. So, first question comes from Lourdes. She says, "I am 45 years old. Do weights 3 times a week. My big question is it okay to do sprints on a trampoline? Due to flat feet, it's really hard for me to run on grass or asphalt."
Okay. All right. So I'm going to hold on that question for a minute here. Lourdes, I see Lourdes. Lourdes got a cool name. I see her on social media. But I told everybody I was going to give you the 6 things. I want to cover it real fast.
Sure.
What do you got to do? Optimize your microbiome. What do we talk about? Alpha Maker, and then I'll get to Lourdes' question. Eating meat. Okay, that's a piece of meat. Eating ferments, fermented foods. Okay, and particularly how you read it here, us alphas, we chew them with meat. We add living microbes. Everybody else eating meat, you know, the carnivores just eating meat, or the vegans just eating plants. They're putting disease microbes. And they're nasty, funky mouth and teeth and tongue. and it's seeding it with bad microbes that they swallow. And then they wonder why they get disease and they're not really optimizing their health. Us here at Alphas getting extraordinary results, the best results in the world by incorporating meat with ferments chewed together, interspersing those microbes in the mouth. Digestion begins, and it puts it for the first time into your stomach in an idealized form. So it's really necessary to co-masticate. Sunshine, us Alphas, we get out in the sun, we strip down, we don't use sunscreen, and we maximize our exposure to sunshine within reason. If you're getting started, don't get burned, get sunshine. So when it gets feel like you're starting to get burned, put on some white clothing, not sunscreen. Then the heat symbol here is for sauna. So we advocate use of a dry finish sauna and not an infrared. I won't take the time to explain the difference, but I just advocate for dry finish sauna. And the cold symbol there is for polar cold therapy. So cold shower, cold plunging to expose your body through hormetics. A lot of this is hormetics. And the last big hormetic is sprinting, okay? Sprinting or fighting, the fight or flight. Basically, get it on, must be intense, must be a short period of time, and it can't last a long time. Otherwise, you're jogging or you're doing a pro boxing match where you're doing multiple rounds. Listen, fights are over fast. They don't go on a long time. They're short. That's the way it is in nature. And it typically is. It's entertainment if it's going on a long time. All right. So Lourdes asked a really important question. It comes up a lot. I am give you the answer. Do not recommend sprinting on a treadmill. The reason is treadmill is an unnatural surface. It is actually moving. So your feet are moving. The surface is moving. And there's introduced with that all that kinetic activity, a greater potential for an injury. If you were 8 years old, you could recover for that. But as you get older and you get more visceral fat, your ability to recover from injury is significantly impaired. So I do not recommend my Alphas sprint on a treadmill. I recommend doing the best you can with trying to find a flat surface, or ideally, if you're new to sprinting, the safest surface to run on is actually sprinting up an incline like a hill or an inclined plane like in a garage. So that's where I sprint. I sprint up garages. I also sprint up the hill in my neighborhood. And the reason that is easier to do, it might be harder from a work standpoint, but it's easier from a safety standpoint. You're less likely to pull a muscle, strain a muscle, a tear, tendon, or some kind of injury. So do the best to try, if you can, find a hill or a parking garage or something to sprint up. But some people, you know, they have no other choice. I'll just look the other way. But boy, it can be just a terrible injury that you can get, fatal injuries. I've seen. I got a patent on a treadmill device, and so I know quite a bit about patent or trademark or treadmills, and it's dangerous pathology. People fall off those things, hit their heads, and die. So be super careful.
All
Next
right.
question.
Okay, so another question from God's Warrior. So it says, what can I do to lose the belly fat that is still hanging around? I've been on carnivore since August of 2024 from around, looks like 195 pounds to 175. However, now at 180. So it looks like gained a little bit.
Yeah.
I do go to the gym 3 times a week.
So the first thing I would tell you is get an MRI scan. Because when you get an MRI scan, you see how much visceral fat you have inside. Then you're going to do a whole lot more. You'll get a lot more serious. So what we've noticed in studies, people that get an MRI scan see this big chunk of fat around their heart and fat in their abdomen. Suddenly, you stop cheating. Carnivores, oftentimes when they come to me, are filled with visceral fats. They are. I've had carnivores as long as 9 years come to me filled with visceral fat, and they think they're good. You know, you're out there like, what could be better? Well, there's a lot better than just carnivore. I like the living carnivore diet, which is adding in living microbes to that meat. So if you're not even living microbes, you're missing out on the benefit to optimize your microbiome, leading to a dysbiotic microbiome, and you're just not going to mobilize that fat. It's going to be stuck in your abdomen. You're going to have a hard time. And it's why a lot of people yo-yo on diets to go up and down and plateau because they're not really optimizing their microbiome. So get an MRI scan and see the disease inside of you, target it, and do all these strategies I talked about here. And ideally, come to our medical practice, do an ultimate start. You can get that MRI. We'll read it, put you on a 2-month program. Or if you're able to come directly to me or one of my doctors, either in Minneapolis or Naples, Florida, we would be glad to see you in our practice and optimize you through that way. We'll get it out of you.
Nice. Okay. All right. So this next question comes from Jason. It says, what is your longer fasting program?
Okay. So my longer fasting program is basically extended fasting. So most people kind of do intermittent fasting. They're just fasting for a few hours. Hey, your ancestors didn't just fast a few hours. They fasted in between when they were successful getting meat and that meat was gone. It was fast time, and it was days and weeks. So they had an ability, and it created our genetic capacity for fasting a long time. So alphas here in our program are pretty routinely fasting 3 days a week, at least 2 days a week. And many are doing 3 days, and sometimes do what I do, 3 days one week, 4 days the next week. So it looks like 72 hours straight, no calories every single week. Now, if you're hearing that for the first time, don't roll your eyes. Don't say you can't do it. Everybody can do that. You're genetically able to do it, but you do need to ease into it because you're just too carbohydrate dependent. You're too, if you haven't eased into it, you're going to get really weak and tired. So you start super slow and take 3 to 6 months to get up to that point. So gradually increase your fasting. If you do the Ultimate Start program, you come to work with us, we will ease you with the exact strategies, how to embrace extended fasting over a longer period of time. But that's basically the principle.
That's awesome. Okay, and we're going to have another awesome here. Let me just see if I can get it up here. So we had I'm going to do a little bit of a shout out to MY. Here we go. She says, Patriot, sign up here. So we had a sign up from tonight. I'm so excited. I came across this live. Don't drink at all, but it was Kismet. Not Kismet. Not sure what that is. Back on carnivore, almost 60 days. So thank you very much. We honor your service, and we look forward to helping you optimize. So the next question here.
Great, welcome.
Yeah. Next question here. So it comes from Flavio. Says, anything about bacteria for diverticulitis?
Yeah, hey Flavio. So diverticulitis, for those of you who don't understand, is inflammation of the diverticuli, where the colon, the wall of the colon becomes inflamed. And it is something that I see quite often when clients come to me and we scan them. So this is what it looks like, the colon. And this is the wall of the colon. The largest part of the wall of the colon is muscle. But when the visceral fat forms in your abdomen, it also forms around your heart and in your muscle, including in your colon. So all the visceral fat is surrounding the colon, and it causes this weakening of the wall, and you get this ballooning out. You can think of it like a hernia. So there's this herniation where the wall becomes weak, And this herniation is very destructive, and it causes numerous problems with weakening in the wall of that colon. And that colon, as it becomes, here's an example of colon going across here, all this visceral fat around it actually causes inflammation. Well, the enteric content is filled with a lot of bacteria, and you want as many beneficial bacteria instead of pathogenic bacteria as you can possibly get within that colon wall. So eating ferments, fasting, doing sunshine, all of that helps to contribute the best microbes that you can possibly get inside of your lumen, the inside of your colon. And so you want to reduce pathogenic microbes, the ones that are more pathogenic, meaning causing disease or pathology. And those typically are from processed foods, carbohydrates, sweet things. They drive your speciations, the type of microbes, in the wrong direction. You could think of this as like feeding the bears. When you feed the bears, they keep coming back. So keep eating processed foods, keep eating carbohydrates, keep eating sweet things, and you'll have more of those bad guys. But eat good, healthy food like meat, grass-fed, grass-finished, and ferments, and you create, you drive your microbiome in a healthy direction. So great question to ask, Flavio. I would say about 20% of the clients who come to see me have diverticular disease, and it can kill you. It can rupture and kill you. So if you got it, work on optimizing your microbiome. Start with that, getting a scan of your abdomen so you can see the amount of disease that you have within your colon. This is a good MRI scan right here. You see that beautiful colon right there? See all the white around it? That's visceral fat. And this lots of visceral fat means lots of heart fat. See all that fat around the heart, above the liver, the lungs, abdomen. This is Governor Stitt's MRI. Governor Stitt was the first governor in the United States to bravely step forward because Secretary Kennedy encouraged him to be scanned for visceral fat and to change his life. So this governor got scanned, and now he's getting rid of his visceral fat. But you can see the threat. And so, Flavia, you're going to have a lot, if you got diverticular disease, you're going to have a lot of visceral fat surrounding your colon. Great question, Flavia.
Yeah, it really was. I'm going to do another shout out for Janice, who's tuning in from Queensland, Australia. So there you go. All right. So our next question here comes from William. Are there any studies on exercise snacks? And he puts that in quotes. Several times a day as an effective alternative to sprinting. Oh, so I guess it's doing quick burst exercises as an exercise snack. Is there a higher ratio of carb burning in the first few minutes of cardio?
Yeah. So if you look at the amount of calories burned in a shorter period of time, you will see more significant caloric expenditure in sprinting. You will also see more significant production of myokines. Myokines are these messaging molecules that get created when you exercise, relative to if you jog or do kind of a aerobic exercise like dancing around or jazzercise or kind of yoga or something like that. You want to do really intense, maximally intense, short bursts of energy to have a more favorable outcome. Now, for sure, you can, in the long run, burn more calories, but one of the downsides to exercise, anything you do, whether you sprint or you jog, is production of oxidizing molecules called reactive oxygen species. And in the aggregate, here's the problem with jogging. You produce way more reactive oxygen species, leading to, unfortunately, more visceral fat, more fat around the heart. So we see in these runners, now everybody's online going, well, I don't have any fat. I'm so skinny. Yes, you do. You just never got a scan. But we see every distance runner and, somebody who does a lot of chronic exercise has this fat around their heart and fat in their abdomen and skinny. They're skinny on the outside. They have like no fat on the outside. So they look skinny, but they're fatties. They got invisible obesity inside of them. So the best form of exercise can be gleaned from all the other species that do intense exercise and they're not doing any long-term exercise. So you want to exercise really intense, really brief, recover. That's the best thing. Build your fast twitch muscles because those fast twitch muscles are what are going to make you get your fanny out of a chair when you're 90, 100, and 120 years old, not your durational slow twitch muscles where you're running a marathon. Quality of life goes to fast twitch muscles that you get from fight or flight. That's what we're always teaching here. What we did ancestrally for a long time throughout our species, fight or flight.
Nice. Another shout out here from to Vivek from India. Thank you for tuning in. All right. So next question here, we get quite a bit from Heather. It says, what if ferments are challenging because of a histamine issue?
Okay, this is a great question. Histamine intolerance or histamine sensitivity is a condition that quite a few people have. And what it is, histamine gets produced in a lot of fermented foods. First of all, it's present in even non-fermented foods. So you can have a histamine issue with other things, but they tend to be a little bit higher in concentration in the fermented foods. So I get this question from time to time from somebody that is, you get symptoms, and the symptoms are runny nose, maybe congestion, maybe malaise, fatigue, kind of nauseated, maybe some bloating. They just don't feel good. So I would direct you to watch my video on histamine and sensitivity and Google Dr. Sean O'Mara, histamine, YouTube. And that'll take you to my video where I explain the condition and I give you specific guidance that goes way beyond what everybody else says, which is avoid fermented foods. Don't you dare avoid fermented foods. They add to your microbiome and really significantly improve your quality of life. You just have to cut back on them, and you need to be colonized with the microbes first in your gut before you're introducing the fermented foods. And I get into how you're going to do that in that video. So give it a watch. My videos are all free, and you can learn how to. Hundreds of people have been, maybe thousands, have been delivered of histamine intolerance through my the tactics and strategies I share in that video.
All right, that's great. We have more people from Queensland joining us, so that's great. All right, so we have time for a few more here. So, all right, so this question is, hello, Dr. Sean. Which comes first, visceral fat or insulin resistance, or do both start simultaneously? I'm assuming he means which do you lose first?
Yeah, so for sure, the first thing you actually get is visceral fat. So here's a couple scans right here. These are two males, and let me show you their faces. Okay, this inflammation starts and spreads all over the body, and it causes inflammation in the face. I can actually read visceral fat in people's faces. Sometimes I go to conferences and people by the hundreds line up for me to read visceral fat in there. But let me just show you these faces. Kids, visceral fat starts in your childhood, and it's increasingly happening in younger ages. way before insulin resistance ever happens. Insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, they're all downstream to visceral fat. So their parents allow me to show their images, and these boys are brave. They're two brothers, 8 years old, 10 years old. But watch what happens to the brothers when they lose visceral fat. This kid becomes this kid, and this kid turns into this kid. They go from average looking kids to now looking like childhood models or actors. And look how big their lips have gotten through better blood flow, and the degree to which their hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen is manifested in these red lips that these boys got from the improved state of health that they got in 6 months from reversing visceral fat. So way before you get insulin resistance, way before metabolic syndrome kicks in, way before you get fatty liver or heart disease or certainly dementia, you get visceral fat. And it starts from pancakes and waffles, sugary cereals in the morning, and then pizzas and bread and all the crap, muffins and donuts that are now coming into most people as they in their childhood that they get exposed to. So what's good for adults is good for kids, not babies, but children could be eating a living carnivore diet, eating meat with ferments. Raise your kids. Many of my client patients are raising their kids like that and turn themselves around. And an example of two kids that were raised like that, eating meat and ferments, can be seen in my own boys. Okay, look what happened to them. 10 years later, those guys grew up really nice. Okay, so the living carnivore diet, meat and ferments, really optimizes kids in addition to just optimizing adults.
That's great. I love those photos. And that previous question was from Deepak. So sorry, I didn't have your name there handy. I appreciate it. So next question is from Mimi, and she says, hi from Connecticut. Can I sprint with a slightly sore Achilles tendon?
Okay, so I don't recommend sprinting if you have an injury. Any kind of a slightly sore sounds like you got an Achilles tendonitis. It's pretty hard to tear the Achilles tendon, but it certainly does tear. I made many diagnoses of it. They're fun to do in the ER. It's a certain very obvious sign. We won't get into it here. But if you are sprinting and you have any pain whatsoever, stop sprinting. It's not worth it. Recover. Don't try to sprint when you're symptomatic in any particular area. Wait till you're fully restored and recovered and not experience any symptoms. There's just too many forces involved in sprinting, and you're apt, even if you don't sever the tendon, you're apt to tear it enough, strain enough that you'll be walking around limping or forever have kind of a point of vulnerability, maybe where that becomes a point of failure for you. And, one day you may be out somewhere, God forbid, and there's a fire or some kind of an emergency and you got to sprint to save your life. So best to be as healthy as possible and avoid doing any kind of an injury that plagues you that's going to be with you for a while. So Mimi, wait till you get recovered from that.
Okay. All right. So I think that wraps us up for the evening. We want to thank everybody on social. I've posted here all the questions that essentially you guys have asked. If you have any additional ones, please go to Growing Better Not Older. You can sign up for our 5 free elimination biofat diet, and ultimately we can get going. And there's some additional links. So certainly hoping that everybody just continues to join us. And thank you very much for this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alvaro. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.